directors, i.e. current managers of the organization. So with us today, we have Sachin Kotecha, who is our events manager. We have Matt Gilman, who is our financial manager. We have Joshua Muscat, whose camera unfortunately isn't working at the moment, but he's going to try and make an appearance later. Muscat, sorry, and he's our volunteer manager. And then we have Jill Stanek, our membership manager, as well as Atomic Crow, who is our gameplay manager. The agenda for tonight's meeting, I'm going to project it on the screen here. Just give me one quick second. We'll go here. There we go. Perfect. So you should currently see the agenda projected on the screen. First, to start things off, we'll be going over a major transition that's going to be happening within the organization, that being our transition to a split board governance model. I'll be going over what those changes consist of, and then Jill Stanek will report the results of our recent board election. After that, we'll have a review of our financial statements from our financial department. And after that, each of our remaining managers will give an overview of their department updates from the 2016-17 season. And after that, we'll open the floor for questions. You can ask questions throughout the presentation using the chat, and then we'll just flag them to be answered in the order that they are received. So that is everything that we have with regards to the agenda. And if there are any questions about that, again, you can just put them in the chat. So to start things off, as I said, we're going to be going over the split board development process that we have been hard at work for over a year now. So this process started with strategic governance meetings by the former directors who were doing the work back at the end of the 2016-17 season. So they, at that point, at the end of the 2015-16 season, decided to meet regularly so that a governance plan could be put in place for the sustainability of the organization. After those governance meetings were held for a period of time, it was decided that the best course of action to build capacity for the organization and increase sustainability for the organization was to transition to a policy board model. So what that means is the board, as it had existed for the past almost 4 seasons now, has been responsible for overseeing the day-to-day activities of Quidditch Canada while also planning for the future of Quidditch Canada. And that's really stretched the capacity of our board, which consists entirely of volunteers. So by splitting the board into managers or officers that will oversee the day-to-day tasks, and a policy board that will be able to think about the vision and future of the organization, that will hopefully increase our capacity and our sustainability and our ability to serve our membership. So after that, we hired, by virtue of lots of thank yous, a couple consultants to help us develop bylaws. Those consultants were Laura Lapine, who is a former head referee, and we consider her a bylaw expert. She did a lot of research and review for us, and including like an environmental scan of comparable organizations to see what our bylaws should consist of. And Nina Patty, who was our previous volunteer director, was able to speak to what the intricacies of Quidditch Canada were. So the two of them put their heads together. They developed our bylaw document, which is now publicly available on our website. And that is what set in motion the board recruitment and now our board election, which ran this past weekend. So that's the review of the process. Again, if there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them at the end of the presentation. I'm now going to turn the mic over to Jill Stanek, who will share the results of that election.
Thanks, Yara. So for the election, we had each of our members, which are the cumulative teams. Essentially, each team is generally a member unless there's more than one team underneath the same structure, in which case they are one associate member and they get one vote. We had them each put forward a name as somebody who was going to represent them and vote on their behalf for this meeting and for the election. We collected that information, sent out election ballots to everyone, and have now collected them and tallied them. We did all this electronically. So I think that's, we had 16 of our 18 eligible associate members vote. And from that, we have elected, drum roll please, I don't know, I think, yeah, there you go. Everyone, yay! So for 1-year terms, we have Cynthia Chow, Chris Radievsky, and Marisha Wojcik. For 2-year terms, we have Stephen Kimball, and Nathan Ross. So congratulations to everyone. Thank you for running. And we're very excited to have this split board model and to have a group of people who are dedicated to that long-term vision, strategic planning, and the long-term growth and maintenance of our sport. So, and thank you to everyone for voting as well. That's everything. And yep. We go back to you, Yara.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jill. And again, want to reiterate, thank you very much to teams for voting and taking advantage of this ability to help us lead our organization into a stronger future. So we're going to now turn the mic over to Matt Gilman, who will be sharing our financial statements. You can find the link to our annual report in the description of this video. I will also have them projected on screen, but if you want to be able to zoom in or get a closer look at those numbers, you can open the annual report link. So Matt, take it away.
Thank you, Yara. So I just wanted to remind you that these are not audited and have not been approved by the current board. It's meant as an overview of our 2016-2017 accounts for members' information, and all teams will be advised of any changes that take place to these documents. Just going over the first expenses and revenues, the 2016-2017 revenues show an increase from the previous year, which reflected an increase in membership fees revenues, event fee revenues, and miscellaneous revenues for the year. The 2016-2017 expenses showed a small decrease from the previous year, which reflects a decrease in the cost of goods sold, as well as a decrease in Team Canada expenditures. As the report shows, we were operating with a net income of $18,703 for the 2016-2017 fiscal year. And now we'll move on to the statement of financial position. So our total assets at the end of 2016-2017 show a small decrease from the previous year, and this reflects a significant increase in our cash assets and a significant decrease in our accounts receivable. Our total liabilities also decreased, with a significant increase in retained earnings and a significant decrease in accounts payable. Awesome. So then, if you have any additional questions about these amounts or would like a chance to do a member audit of our financial statements, please contact me at either my personal Quidditch Canada email, which is matthew.gilliman@quidditchcanada.com, or at finance@quidditchcanada.com.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Matt. And as well, I just wanted to share that an audit of our financial statements is currently taking place, and we are requesting one additional volunteer to help with that audit. So it requires approximately 3 to 5 hours of your time. No previous auditing experience is necessary. Matt will be able to guide you through this process, and you won't be the only auditor as well. So if this is something that you are interested in doing and helping us achieve, you can contact Matt at the email on the screen. Perfect. So we're going to go ahead now to the department updates. And to start things off, I'll be giving an overview of updates that happened in the past season from the communications department. So there were 2 very major updates that occurred in the past season. The first was the launch of our newly developed website. This website has been, by leaps and bounds, a huge improvement on the previous iteration of it. It has a lot of information that's more readily accessible, including news updates, rankings. All of our rules and policies are currently on there. It's an ongoing project, so if there's anything that you want to see on this website that currently isn't there, if it's not meeting your needs in any way, the department is very open to suggestions, feedback, and contributions from people in the community. A lot of writers and blog posts and photographers have their work featured on this website regularly, so if this is something that you are interested in sharing your talents with, then it's certainly appreciated. The other major update in the communications department was my hiring. So prior to January 2017, the department was actually being mainly managed by Sachin Kotecha, who, if anybody is aware of the scope of the events department's work, can only imagine how taxing that may have been for him to have to manage both the events department and the communications department. So now being able to have one person solely focused on communications was a huge relief on both Sachin and on Nina Patty, who was also doing some of the communications work at that time. So those were the key major updates. The communications department regularly houses the highest number of volunteers, namely casual volunteers such as videographers and photographers. So it's a growing department. It requires a lot of group effort, and it's the large number of people willing to commit to the archiving of our sport that make the success of the department possible. Okay, perfect. So we're gonna put the mute on me for now so I can stop talking quite so much, and we're gonna move over to Jill, who's going to give a review of membership.
Hi, so the membership department also, I think, did a lot last year. We had pretty steady membership numbers at 615 individual members and 24 teams. 21 were league teams and 3 were development teams. As new things that we did last year, we did create a new youth membership category, as well as splitting out some other categories as well. So that's been an ongoing project. Overall, these numbers are pretty steady, which is good in some ways, but also a bit disappointing in others. We do want we want increases in our members every year. So it's great to have steady numbers, but we'd like to see a little bit more increase there. Aside from that, we, in the last year, switched to Top Score from Point Streak, which I think has been working fairly well for both events and for membership registration. We also discovered last year that there was an increased need for the high value insurance and lower premiums. More people are relying on our insurance as their only insurance instead of it being secondary or tertiary insurance. So we decreased those, or we focused on trying to decrease that over the course of the season so that we could launch that for this season. We also discovered that we generally had very low injury reports. Injuries and safety is under this department, and determined that that's likely because people weren't reporting them versus because they weren't getting injured. So we revamped that system again for launch this season. We did do some expansion and development opportunities, especially over the summer with the Participation 150 playlist and some of the Coach.ca coaching opportunities. So those were all focuses. Our biggest challenges in this area is definitely our low staff numbers. You're pretty much looking at the membership department right now. So if anyone wants to help out in any of these areas and help us grow in safety and injuries, insurance, or expansion, we'd love to have you.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Jill. And we're going to hand it over to Atana Crow from our gameplay department.
Hey everyone, so as it indicates in the annual report, the 2016-17 season was led by Emma Shiramochao, the former gameplay director, now current gameplay coordinator. There were several key developments in the gameplay department last season. The first major was developing rules specific to Quidditch Canada and the introduction of the adopted rulebook and amendments document. This document mainly allowed Quidditch Canada to not only use a rulebook that has been regularly tested by North American players, but also allowed us to make changes specific to safety and representation issues we had seen develop in the previous 2015 and 16 season. Some specific Canadian rules I can speak to were the inclusion of the charging rule, the mouthguard policy, as well as the max 4 gender rule. The other change that was the referee testing, and that was moved in-house. Previously, in the 2015 season, 2015-16 season, it was run through the IQA's IRDP, which stands for International Referee Development Program. Emma, in partnership with other Quidditch rule experts in the US, developed the Canadian referee testing, which required manual scheduling. Emma, who took on the work for scheduling, scoring, and certifying referee testing single-handedly. So I just want to commend her for that. This enabled us to make referee testing mandatory for not only head referees, but also assistant and snitch referees, as well as snitch runners. those major highlights, in addition to the other regularly maintenance of policies and procedures, highlighted our 2016-17 season from the gameplay department.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Atana. Okay. And we're going to hand it over to Sachin for events.
Awesome. Thanks, Yara. So 2016-2017 was a big year for a lot of departments, including the events department. So in terms of staffing, we continue to have one permanent staff member other than myself, and that was Alex Dici, who's our conventions coordinator. She does a lot of great work. So shout out to Alex. She continues to do a great job. However, growth is necessary, specifically in the events department. It's a lot of work for one person. So since the end of last season, we've had a job posting up for events managers who are now going to be called events coordinators. And as well, this season, since I'm stepping down after nationals, there will also be a posting. It's up right now for my position. So this is definitely a lot of openings for a lot of people if they want to help out with our events. It's a big part of our season, and definitely we need a lot of help with that. This was also our first season with event bidding, which was a huge change for us. It moved us away from going to cities ourselves, sometimes at the last minute. That was a common complaint that we received in the past. Our events weren't announced early enough. So we started event bidding. So that was looking at the USQ and MLQ, the way they procure their events and the way that other NSOs in Canada and around the world procure the hosts for their events. So we switched to that. We had a lot of great success, and that's continuing to grow this year as well. So we'll be able to announce our events sooner, and we'll be able to build stronger relationships with cities to help grow the sport. This was also the first season for the official league tournament policy. The goal of this was to standardize the Quidditch event as seen across Canada. There were big differences in how they were being run out west versus how they were here in the east, where I'm based. So there was a need to standardize what a Quidditch event looked like. So we're continuing with this policy. It seems to be working pretty well. And with that, there was the TD manual as well, and that helps out when you're trying to abide by this policy. Last season was also the final Canada Day Fantasy Tournament run by Quidditch Canada. From now on, that tournament will continue to be run, but it will be hosted by the Carleton Ravens, who are a local team. And finally, just of note, last year's Western Regional Championship was the runner-up for the inaugural City of Surrey Sport and the City Award, which is great to see our sport being recognized in terms of these kind of awards. So yeah, that's all for events.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sachin. We're going to hand it back to Jill, who is going to provide some updates on our national team program.
There you go. So the big things for this year was changing from a one-off just for the event team program to launching our standing national team program. The concept there, of course, is that you have up to 42 athletes who are training and working all year round, building skills, taking those back to their clubs. And from there, we'll select travel teams to go to events like World Cup, potentially some other tournaments as well. And that's the concept. So this year, we completed perk fulfillment for the 2016 national team, and then we initiated the new program by hiring staff and hosting camps all summer, hosting them east to west and doing a lot of selection. Massive shout out to everyone who helped us with that, whether it was teams who helped us with equipment, the many volunteers who helped us actually pull off the camps and the evaluations, and of course our core staff as well, who've done a lot of work organizing that and getting it ready for what will hopefully be our most successful World Cup yet.
Amazing. Thank you very much. We're all looking forward to following the national team very closely as it travels to Florence this season. So we're going to hand it over to Josh Muscat for our final volunteer report.
Great. All right. So I just want to start by giving a big thank you to all of the volunteers that we've had join us and stick with us throughout the past year. An especially big thank you to Nina Patty, who has now left as the volunteer director before I filled the position. She did a lot of great work throughout the season that we're discussing now, and brought many of our volunteers on. I also want to thank Rachel, who has been the sole other volunteer in the volunteer department. she's done great work for Quidditch Canada, and I look forward to the continued work that she's going to be doing. So a little bit about the volunteer department. We saw the development of the team's council during this season, which over time we've been refining and trying to get it to a good point. I think now that it's starting to be used more, as we've seen, we've been able to communicate a lot about these elections to our membership. So it's definitely been helpful there. I haven't been extremely involved, as Jill has taken that on. And during the same season, we also saw a few of our directors leave, and we filled those positions. So with Matt as financial director, Yara as communications director, Atana as gameplay director, and myself as volunteer director. A little bit about the department moving forward. There's always open positions. If you look on the website, you can see a list of everything that we're looking for. But if there is a skill that you have or something you would like to help with, any area of need that you think we might have, and there's not a job posted already, I would love to hear from you. Let me know what your interests are and what kind of work you'd like to do for Quidditch Canada, and I'm sure that we can find a spot for you. And we look forward to seeing the different things that you can bring to the table. So that's pretty much it for my department, but just thank you again to all the volunteers, and to the rest of you, I hope to see you volunteer soon.
Amazing. Thanks very much, Josh. And again, big thank you to our volunteers, only a fraction of whom are listed on the screen, but everybody who's done any work to support Quidditch Canada as an organization, you are very much the reason that we continue to exist almost 4 seasons later. So thanks very much for that. So that's actually the end of what our current managers have to present. So we'd now love to open the floor up for questions. So if there are any questions, you can send them to us through the chat in the YouTube live stream. If you don't have any questions that come to mind now, if you want to sort of reflect over all of the information that we've overloaded you with in the past 25 minutes, you can certainly send any upcoming questions that come to mind to info@quidditchcanada.com, and I will post that email in the chat as well, though I'm sure you've all seen me share it a number of times before. And so we'll just wait a couple minutes here. We know that there is a bit of a lag in this live stream, so if people are just tuning in now or just hearing that the floor is open for questions now, you can send any questions our way. Okay, we actually do have a question right now. Between the 2 different types of boards, does one report to the other, or are they on the same level? That's an excellent question. So we have one board, technically. The current managers, who were the former directors, will not be a board anymore. They will be reporting to the board. So the policy board that was just voted in, consisting of Chris, Cynthia, Nathan, Steve, and Marisha, will be the overseers of our organization. They will hold the managers accountable. They'll hold each other accountable. So the development of the policy board really increases transparency and accountability across the organization. So in terms of hierarchy, they will be on a higher level than the current managers who are delivering this presentation to you. That's a great question. Thanks very much. And if there are any other questions, feel free to send them our way as well. It's also worth mentioning that the policy board is going to be responsible for hiring our executive director. So as many of you know, we've been without an executive director for some time. Part of the reason we held off on seeking one out is because we wanted to bring an executive director in the right way. And the way that is standard for organizations like ours is for a board to oversee the hiring of that executive director. So they will hire the executive director, who will directly manage us, and the executive director reports to the board and answers to the board. Are there any other questions? We'll see right here. Doesn't appear that we have any other questions at the moment. So we'll hang on for just a couple more minutes to see if anybody else watching has anything else that they'd like to add. Sachin, do you have any nationals deadlines that you want to remind people about while we've got teams tuned in?
Yeah, so the only deadline coming up right now in the near future is for teams that need to book the partner hotel. That's coming up on March the 5th. You'll need to book your rooms to get in the room block by then, and also if you're planning on making use of the facility shuttle between the hotel and Tim Hortons Field, that has to be done by March the 5th so we can take care of the logistics for you there. And the only thing besides that deadline-wise you got to look out for is the roster lock deadline, which is, I believe, the Friday before the event. So those are your deadlines you got to look out for.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Sachin.
From the gameplay department, also for nationals, for folks who are looking to put in player transfers, please get those player transfers before the roster lock deadline, just so that you can provide my department as well as the membership department to get enough time to look into that and make sure everything runs smoothly, especially with all the travel coming into this tournament. So please get that into us. Hopefully, we're not setting a hard deadline, but for sure it has to be before the lock, but try getting a week before the lock, so 2 weeks before the actual event.
Okay, perfect. So just to end things off on a high note, I'm going to turn the mic over back to Sachin to share some news.
All right, so in terms of, this is kind of going back to our bid process. So one of the things that we do when we're looking for host cities is we work with cities across Canada. So for example, the upcoming nationals, we're working with Tourism Hamilton. Earlier in the season, we worked with our host cities there in Abbotsford with Tourism Abbotsford, and in Oshawa with Sport Durham in the city of Oshawa. In Canada, these cities and all the sport organizations like Basketball Canada, Soccer Canada, Hockey Canada, they all have one meeting every year. This year it's in Halifax, and it's actually coming up next week, and I'll be in attendance there. So we'll have some cool networking opportunities to continue to grow our sport, to meet with other sports organizations, and to meet with other cities to bring in some attention to the sport as well. And I think you can look forward to some updates for that on our social media channels next week.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Sachin. And again, a lot of the events that Sachin has gained invites to are a direct result of the hard work that the events departments puts in, and all of the departments in collaboration with events to ensure that our events are so high quality. We have one other question here. What plans are there to grow team level membership? So our team numbers have been either steady or within 1 or 2 basically of the previous year for the past 3 years, coming up on 4 now. So the question is with regards to plans to grow that, number. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Jill to speak to our member growth overall and our plan for that.
Hi, so I think it's a great question. We have a few different plans or pieces of a plan. We have a full expansion plan available here where we're trying to get the word out about Quidditch, tell people who we are and what we're doing, that we exist. And part of that is hiring some people who are focused solely on expansion. Because we've had so much turnover in the director's side, which are now managers, we haven't been able to get the postings up for this yet. But we're very much looking forward to doing that, as well as finishing off some how to start team programs and growing on that side. So we have essentially all the pieces here. We just need to put them together and then get the word out to everyone. So we've also been making a lot of connections at conferences, various sport conferences, and we know there is a lot of interest at various age levels and different special groups as well. So I think there's a lot that we can do. We just need a little bit of time to be able to focus on it. And I think part of that is also having our new policy structure means that we'll have the time and the resources to be able to do this. So if anyone has more ideas about expansion, especially again, we're looking for expansion into areas and making sure that we are a good community for people to join. We definitely want to hear from people.
Amazing. Thanks very much for speaking to that, Jill. So with that final question, we are going to close things off for tonight. So thank you again to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to everyone for voting, and thank you to my fellow colleagues, my managers, for preparing the reports and being here to present this report today. If there are any other questions that folks may have, any interest in volunteering, or really anything that you are seeking from the organization in any way, we certainly welcome your comments, questions, and feedback. You can send them to us at info@quidditchcanada.com or can contact any one of the managers directly. But you can also contact our board of directors very shortly as well as we begin that board orientation process. So with that, we're going to sign off for the evening. Take care, everyone, and have a lovely rest of your night. Bye-bye.